Oh, howdy all. Grab yourself a beer. It's time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today is day 7 of spoiler season for the Scourge League, and we got one new piece of information today, but because it's the end of the first week, I want to do a recap of all of the information that we've got so far, but we'll start with a bit more of an in-depth on the new piece of information, which will still be short because it's just a tidbit, and then after that we'll go into quick recap mode for everything else for those of you that missed a lot of the rest of the week's news. So, here we have Chasing Risk. This is the new piece of information today. It is a divination card for a unique synthesis item. Now, I've been having a little bit of discussion with people over on the Path of Exile subreddit about what exactly this card is going to give, because there's a couple of precedents for unique items that are tied to a league, and they work a little bit differently to each other because the game tends to prioritize, like if it's possible to have a boss exclusive drop and an item that's not a boss exclusive drop, normally these sorts of divination cards only give the non-boss versions. So, to clarify what I mean there is a divination card, there's actually two of them for a nemesis item. And these divination cards always grant you a drop anywhere unique. That's because nemesis only had drop anywhere uniques in it. If you have the divination card for a bestiary item or the divination card for a breach item, you'll get a boss drop because those leagues only had boss drops. But then there is the divination card for a delve item. Delve was a league that had a couple of drop anywhere items, but that it also had a couple of boss specific items, actually more boss specific items than almost anything else. So you can get the unique map Doriani's Machinarium, which is a Ahutotli the Blind exclusive drop. You can get All's Uprising, which is an All the Crystal King exclusive drop. And there's even a couple of bad uniques that are tied to Kurgle the Black-Blooded. So there's all of these different unique drops that you can get. But if you turn in the divination card that grants a random delve item, then what you get is one of the drop anywhere uniques. So Chasing Risk feels like it should only drop the synthesis drop anywhere uniques. So these are March of the Legion, Hyri's Truth, and the one you probably care about, which is Maloney's Mechanism. However, there's those three that are now, that are Synthesis League originating drop anywhere uniques. But then there's also a large number of boss specific drops in the Synthesis League, and specifically, the divination card's flavor text uses the words memory, nostalgia, guilt, regret, anguish, and the like all of these things from the circle rings. So Synthesis had a cycle of 5 unique rings, and they're amongst the more popular unique items from the expansion now. So there's the Circle of Fear, which as soon as I hear that word, I can only think of a song by the same name. There's the Circle of Anguish and the like. These all empower Herald skills, and they do so in various different ways. They're really good items, and they're still quite sought after, especially ones that are well rolled. But the Chasing Risk divination card makes specific references to them by name, so it makes me think that they kind of should drop from it. But then again, can this divination card then grant a bottled faith? We're just going to find that out over time. Like past precedent would be the answer is no, but maybe this one's an exception. Lastly, I don't know if it can drop the unique maps. There are 5 unique synthesis maps. There's the Twisted Distant Memory and its cycle, all of the precursors to Maven's Invitation the Forgotten, and then of course there's the Cortex, the one that we care the most about. Again, no idea. They are unique items. They were introduced as related to the Synthesis League, but we don't know whether this can drop them. So we're just going to have to find that out through trial and error. And I do think that the first people to turn this divination card in and to learn that information will probably keep it to themselves for a while and potentially even deliberately lie in order to adjust the price of this on the market. So do keep that in mind. If you see a report and it's not backed up by video evidence, then I would just treat any reports about what Chasing Risk can drop with a grain of salt. Anyways, that's the new card. Let's go through the minor teasers first and then a quick recap of the big news. So we got yesterday information about Unrelenting Timeless Vaal emblems and the rest of the domain of Uber Timeless Conflict. One thing I didn't mention in yesterday's video, 10% improved rewards. I did some digging into what that means. It's used in exactly one other place in the game, and that is on Ritual Vessels. Ritual Vessels have the text 20% improved ritual rewards. If you've ever run 2, 3, or 4 bloodstained ritual, blood-filled vessel ritual maps, you will know that the rewards for them are pretty good. You get a lot of loot from them and a lot of quite good stuff, quite rare stuff. So for that reason, I think 10% improved rewards is a lot more impactful than people think it is. That said, on the flip side, the Timeless Val emblem just on its own provides 4% penetration of your resistances, and I'm using physical damage reduction as I'm using the term resistance to include physical damage reduction here, which is something that's going to very quickly overwhelm you, and potentially the other four emblems might do something different, or they might do more of the same. We're just going to have to find that out. I do think that the Uber domain of Timeless Conflict is going to be a very deadly, deadly, deadly encounter. But this 10% improved rewards is not a more multiplier for loot. It is qualitative, but it is considerable. Because yeah, those blood-filled vessels are really good. Next, there's a divination card, Guardian's Challenge for a Shaper Guardian map. When you're configuring your loot filter, put this as being worth an Awakened Sextant, whatever you put an Awakened Sextant at. And this will be something that'll be much appreciated as a drop. More access to Guardian encounters, more access to Guardian's Aid if you're powerful enough to beat that, and if you're powerful enough to beat maps with it, and more access to Maven's Invitation the Formed, which is one of the most fun fights in the game. So this will be a good thing to have in around. Next is the Blight Ravaged maps. So these are tier 18 Blight maps, because monster level 85, with a whole bunch of other mods on them. These should be pretty crazy, especially with this can be anointed up to 9 times. I have no idea of how these are going to play. I do think one thing is going to be really important to say with these. These are going to be an absolute nightmare if you do not have a beast of a PC. Just the quantity of monsters that get spawned in a normal Blighted map can be rough. If the quantity that will be spawned in an Uber Blighted map just could be ridiculous. Next is another divination card, Disdain. So set of 5 for a Delirium Orb. Again, put this as Awakened Sextant tier. It might get a bit higher later in the league. Don't know where this is going to drop, but oh my god, this has got to be the winner for the art lately. This sort of abstract art that's got this pile of bones making up the lower half of the eye just looks really, really fantastic in my opinion. Uber Chayula Breachstones were next, and this is something that is going to be it's going to be something people are going to try to do these for XP rotations. Don't do this. The reason for this is that unless there's mods that we're not seeing here, unless there's sort of hidden zone mods that cause there to be additional monsters, these only give 7% increased XP over a Chayula's Pure Breachstone, and they do so at considerably higher risk than a Chayula's Pure Breachstone. Why do I say 7%? Going from monster level 83 to 84 increases base XP by 3% for monsters, roughly. And additionally, going from monster level 83 to 84 has a very small effect on the XP formula. At level 99, you receive, I believe it's 4.12% of base XP for running content that is monster level 83. And monster level 84, you receive 4.25 or something like that. Whatever the difference, it multiplies out to a little bit less than 7% more XP. Given all of the tremendous increase in danger that you're going to be facing in the Chayula's Flawless Breachstones, I think that you should not regard these as XP rotations. Keep using pure Breachstone rotations for that purpose. Flawless Breachstones will be more dangerous, there for pushing your character to the limits, and potentially for getting some new loot. We're going to have to see what they actually drop when we start running them. Then there's the divination card that probably excites me the most, the Aspirant. This is for a magic item with a single elevated mod on it. One thing a lot of people have been talking about is the potential to use beast imprints with this. I actually don't think that's the best idea. And the reason for that is that when you are using Awaken Orb crafting, the part that you can revert after a failed Awaken Orb is the part that has the same item level as the final product. So the divination card set turned in of the Aspirant will give you an item level 80 magic item, which will have a single elevated mod on it. It can be one that can't appear on an item level 80 item, we believe. So that's the starting point. But if you were to then use this in conjunction with an Awaken Orb on an item, you need to choose. Either you need to choose to destroy the item that you sourced from the Aspirant, in which case you can't revert an imprint, or you need to donate the other item's influence to the item, in which case you are stuck with a 80 item level on the final product, which is generally pretty restrictive. So I think in general, this is going to be a strong divination card. You should set it on your loot filter at exactly the same place that you set the divinations card the Hoarder, which is a set of 5 for 3 Exalted Orbs, because I think a set of this will be about 3 Exalts in the end. But this is going to be a strong thing to pull. Be interesting to see where it comes from. So that's the minor news. The major news was the Balanced Manifesto, which was split into 3 pieces and contains a whole lot of information. The first page talks about player ailment mitigation and flasks. Essentially, there's a whole bunch of new mechanisms for fighting against ailments. And I think that the spot that they're going for is that ailments are not the complete and utter joke at actual endgame that they were in the 3.13, 3.14 era, but that players have a lot more tools to fight them than they did in 3.15. So there's going to be a whole lot of options on the passive tree that you can invest in. There's going to be the flask options are going to be back to preemptively ward yourself against ailments through flasks, and additionally there'll be just a lot of other changes that'll be going on that. I highly recommend having a full read of this, but expect that as a high level overview, characters will be more able to mitigate ailments than they have been in the past. Additionally, Purity of Elements is going to grant absolute immunity to the to all elemental ailments. However, Purity of Elements is going to a 50% reservation. I think that is a buff, as no one used it at endgame except for Aurabots, and Aurabots are being dealt with in a later part of this manifesto anyway. But this is looking like a really, really, really interesting set of changes. Flasks, though, in general, will be more powerful than they were in 3.15, less powerful than they were in 3.13, 14, and so on, back and forth. Next up is the changes to core character defenses and recovery. This is a massive suite of changes. Again, I did a whole video on this, but fundamentally what we're seeing here is the changes that are being made make evasion, armor, and energy shield more important, both more powerful and more important, and deal with the incredible power of dodge by outright removing it. Dodge is being replaced by a new mechanic called Spell Suppression, which is a right side of the tree defense that will give you a percentage chance to take half damage from spells. This can be stacked to 100%, and it should be about twice as easy to get as Spell Dodge was on gear and also on the passive tree. So that's going to be something that will be pretty significant change-wise, but also it should give a lot of protection against spike damage. So when I'm talking about spike damage, I'm talking about situations where no individual hit one-shots you, but you die in perhaps 300 to 400 milliseconds from a string of medium-sized hits. Those sorts of things, spell suppression, you can get to the point that it will, that you will survive the vast majority of those sorts of scenarios. So dodge and blind are being nerfed heavily, and then there's a whole bunch of massive buffs that are taking place to armor, minor buffs to energy shield that are coming about in a clunky way that I do not like, a whole bunch of options for using armor and energy shield together, which is something new. It's never really been doable before, and also some buffs to evasion that make it more effective. Like essentially, at low investment, I think you'll find that right side of the tree characters will be tankier than they are at low investment, but you won't have the same sort of situation of right side of the tree high investment characters where you can face tank, you can face tank 2 bosses at the same time. They're continually swiping at you and nothing is ever hitting you. That's going away, but characters that take incidental damage should be a lot stronger against it. I think overall this is going to close some of the gap between the player that is just putting together a build as they go and doesn't know all of the best uniques and the like. It'll close the gap between them defensively and someone that stacks all sorts of crazy mechanics to make a character that is nearly completely unkillable. Additionally, we will see changes to a number of specific unique items. So for instance, one of the things that's happened is that the unique item Memory Vault has been causing GGG to not be able to buff armor in the past because it just granted so much of it. So Memory Vault is getting nerfed hard. And I have a Perfectly Divine Legacy one over in Standard that I actually ID'd as Perfectly Divine, so that should be kind of cool. But that's basically the Day 2 Balance Manifesto in a nutshell. If you want to have a look at the more details, though, like I said, have a look at the official announcement or go through my video on it from a couple of days ago. Last was part 3. This was the Auras, Curses, and Elemental Damage over Time manifesto. So, firstly, let's talk elemental damage over time. I have talked with Shaq Central, who is the player behind the most popular guide to Vortex at the moment. He probably knows more than anyone else about Vortex and cold damage over time builds in general. His opinion is that taken as an entire package, these will reduce the power of cold damage over time builds at a low to medium investment, but not gut them, and will have very little effect on higher investment cold damage over time builds. I'm inclined to believe him on that. One of the key things that a lot of people are screaming, this is the nerf from hell, are missing is that there are massive changes to the amount of cold dot multi that you can get on gear. And whilst the loss of elemental equilibrium is big, and we'll get to what's happening with elemental equilibrium in a sec. So elemental equilibrium going away is a big deal, but you can pick up so much cold dot multi that you can make that up. At least that's the opinion of Shaq Central, and I think that he is right on that question. So the first thing is that Aurabots are being brought down to earth. I think they'll still be strong, and players that are not going out of their way to stack ridiculous numbers of auras will receive a buff from the change that they're making, but where reduced mana reservation is being retired as a stat, including on legacy gear, and it is being replaced by a new stat called mana reservation efficiency, reservation efficiency, because it applies to life as well. Reservation efficiency, if you have 50% reservation efficiency, this means that an aura that would cost you 50% to reserve instead costs you 50% divided by 100 plus 50. So that'll be, divided by 1.5. So that'll be 33%. I'm not sure which way it rounds. It might be 34. But that's the fundamentals of the change they're making. This would be a straight up nerf, except for the fact that they're doubling the value of mana reservation. The reduced mana reserved numbers are being doubled to give this new stat. So essentially what this means is that the number of auras that you can reserve will increase linearly as you progress. They will not explode up towards the end. So that's the situation that's going on there. Basically, it's a buff for everyone that's not an Aurabot or an Aura stacker, and it's a massive nerf to those builds, but they'll still be good. Next up is the curse bot situation. Basically, similar sort of thing, except that there's a whole bunch of ways that you can invest in curses that are just flat going away. So for most players, this will have no impact, and for other characters, it will be a considerable one. Fundamentally, though, the changes to Aurabots and curse bots. If you are a top 0.01% player, the sort of player that is taking on Shaper on day 2, Uber Elder on day 3, and Uber Elder the Maven, and Maven's Invitation the Feared in a group on day 4, then this is going to be a transformative change. This is going to have a severe impact on your ability to stockpile mirrors in the first days of the league. If you're not in that tier of players, then this is going to mean that the bossing that you can do, by the time that you get to the bosses, their boss drops will still be worth something because the groups won't have already gone and farmed them so affectionately beforehand. Next, elemental damage over time. There's just so much to say on this that I do have a separate video on it. But the fundamentals of it, Ignite is getting better. Will it be great? I'm not sure. Will it be good? I think it will be. Cold damage over time, as I think, is going to be about where it is now, and builds like Righteous Fire that deal fire damage over time that isn't from a Ignite, I think will also be in a similar spot to cold damage over time. So my gut says that Righteous Fire as a build is maybe even a little bit worse than it is now. Maybe slightly better, but it'll be quite close to where it is currently. Cold Dot will be in a similar place to where it is now, but might take just a little bit more gear to get off the ground, to get to the point that you can do things like Maven's Invitation, the Hidden. You should be able to do everything up to and including, say, the Maven and Cyrus and Uber Elder. But for the hardest fights in the game, I think Cold Dot builds will need a little bit more gear. And then we have the Fire Dot builds. Ignite should be in a much better place, but Ignite was in the absolute dumps in 3.15. Anyway, that's a summary of everything that we know from week 1 of the Scourge League spoiler season. If you've got comments or questions, definitely fire away below. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it there. May your Valorbs have interesting results, and do check out the entirety of these manifestos because I have missed things in this summary. I have skipped over a bunch of things, and if you want to see the earlier videos that I put out on them, they'll also be linked below.